nice to have you with us this morning. Beautiful Friday morning. I see from tomorrow, what is tomorrow? Tomorrow is the 17th of April. They predict our first single-digit temperatures for overnight. So here in South Africa, definitely getting colder. Other places in the world, it's getting warmer. So it's amazing how these things all work and play together. But nonetheless, we're here. We've got not such a long episode today. It's only going to be half an hour. I've got an engagement that I've got to attend, unfortunately, at 7:30. But we are going to get into it. So today, the only segment we've got is the news. But before I put David on, just want to say that we are going to be talking today about value and your value to your clients and whether they understand and see that. So stick with me. It's an interesting one. So looking forward to sharing that with you. But on that note, let's go to David in the news studio.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the news. I think I'm going to start with a shock announcement by Absa that they are, in fact, closing down their money market fund. So that is the unit trust money market fund that will be closed down by the 6th of July this year. The reason given by Absa was that after surveying clients, they found that many of the clients thought that this was like a bank account and the capital was actually guaranteed and the returns guaranteed by Absa Bank, which is not the case because it was a unit trust. And therefore, they're giving the clients the option to take their money and move it to another account, or within 90 days, they will be transferred into the Absa Bank investment account and no longer the unit trust. So again, if you have any clients in the Absa Bank money market fund, the unit trust fund, this is an opportunity to start engaging with your clients and talking to them about that. Then in the other news, news from SARS, it seems like SARS is again becoming an employer of choice because they have several vacancies that they've advertised, and they've received over 88,000 applications for those vacancies, of which 15,000 were internal. So we are seeing a case of people are looking for jobs. They are out there. SARS did issue a press release that's saying, government cannot create the jobs alone. And it is really an area we need to focus on as a country. So they are looking for people in information technology, data management, order and risk. So again, we are seeing SARS rebuilding their capability and some of the capability that was lost during the state capture. So those are the headlines for you to check. And then what I really want to focus on in this news is some of the releases from the FSCA this week, and they were enforcement actions and sanctions issued against companies. So in the first case of the sanctions, there were 3 different companies that were investigated and were fined 20,000 Rand each. And the reasons for those sanctions is non-compliance with the Financial Intelligence Center Act. So in all 3 cases, after a visit from FSCA, it was found that these companies did not have their risk management and compliance program in place, as well as staff weren't sufficiently trained on FIC. So again, a warning out to the financial planners and the FSPs out there. The Financial Intelligence Center Act is a very important act, and ensure that you have your risk management plan in place and you are training your staff on that, because that is an area that FSCA is looking at. And like I say, 3 sanctions were issued. Then there were a lot of enforcement actions issued by the Financial Services Tribunal. All of these cases that were issued were actually dealing with debarment of representatives. So in the one case, a representative was debarred because she certified a document without seeing the original. And again, under the honesty and integrity, she was not using her Commissioner of Oath status correctly. So again, if you are a Commissioner of Oath, very important to make sure that you do use your Commissioner of Oaths correctly. If you are certifying documents, you can't do it unseen of the originals. Then there were about 3 cases where there were issue of fraudulent policies. And again, this was cases where the advisors were trying to earn commission. In some cases, they were issuing policies with their own bank details on it, incorrect client contact details. They were circumventing the compliance function in their businesses. And in all these cases, the tribunal actually upheld the debarment. So again, very important. I think there is some desperation coming in from times. I don't know in this day and age how people think they can get away with falsifying signatures because there's a lot of focus on that. And in all those cases, the cases were upheld. The last one issued by the tribunal was a case when an employee was debarred again due to dishonesty. He was absent from work without permission, and then he also lied about where he was. And so the FSP decided that that indicated dishonesty. In this case, the tribunal actually set the case aside, the debarment aside, and said that this labor relations issue, they didn't find and they weren't convinced that the conduct was serious enough to justify a debarment. So again, those are some interesting cases coming out from the FSCA. And then the last bit, again, some useless facts for your dinner parties. So we know the English language is full of idiosyncrasies. It's quite a complicated language, but very interesting. The word dreamt, according to the Oxford Dictionaries, is the only word in the English language that ends with MT. So I've looked at this and I can't think of another one. If you find it, let's prove the Oxford Dictionary is wrong. But again, thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your Friday and your weekend. And back to you in the studio, Francois.
Awesome, David. Thank you very much. You must have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you or someone from your valley next week. So have a good one, and thanks. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I don't know why we always wave. Like, it's just natural, I guess, because we can see each other. So hi to all of you and bye to David. There we go. So with that, let me get into the main topic for today, which is the value of your financial advice. Good. So, just good morning, everybody that is on here this morning live. Really appreciate it that you join us at 7 a.m. in the morning. It's amazing to have you with us. It's always best to be here live. If you're listening to the recording, watching the recording, thank you very much as well. So I recently did a talk about this, in this week, in fact, about the value of financial advice to one of the big banks. And in preparation for this, there's a whole lot of things that I sort of uncovered and things that I put a little bit more structure to than I did before, because we have spoken a little bit about value on one of the episodes. We've spoken about business models. We've spoken about the different like business model canvas and value proposition canvas. But those were all meant to sort of highlight the fact that we need a value proposition and that we need to put it together in such a way so that we can present and offer it out to our potential clients and also our existing clients. But there's a lot that we need to do in terms of this, because simply doing that is not enough. And so I came up with this, and I want to share this with you in about 20 minutes. So let's see how this goes. All right. So I'm going to use some slides for you. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're welcome to head on over to the PROpulsion Learning YouTube channel, and you can view this as well. But it'll be easy to follow, so don't worry if you're running or walking or doing something like that. It'll be fine. All right, so in terms of financial, or when we talk about the value of financial advice, the big question is really, what is value? And we know that value is really subjective. It is in the eye of the beholder, almost like beauty, and it means different things to different people. But I mean, you're welcome in the comments or in the chat just to say, what is, if you hear the word value, when is something valuable to you? When is something really, when does it mean something to you? When do you attach that? And again, you need to use the word value, but it's not just something. There's something more to that thing. Like when does that happen for you? So how would you term that? The thing that I think it is, it's just the difference that something makes. But in this case, because we're talking about financial advice and financial planners and advisors and all the support roles that really support this profession, It is the difference that you make. It is what you bring to the relationship. It is what you bring to the success. It is the contribution that you make to get people to where they want to be, to help them really fulfill their dreams and reach and do the things that they really set out to do. But that is the difference. So as you know, they usually say the difference between what you get and what you pay, that's value. But I think it goes way beyond that if I say it's the difference that you make. The fact here is that adding more value, we can do, and we do that all the time. We add more value. We add more value. We come up with a new service. We come up with an additional offering, or we hone our value proposition. We introduce something. We take something away. We work on it all the time. But adding more value means absolutely nothing. It means nothing, and you can almost not see nothing there because it means nothing if your client doesn't understand your value and understand your value proposition. And this is the missing link as far as I'm concerned, that, often we have these fantastic things, but, and we get very excited about it, by the way. Even if I look at something like PROpulsion Pro, I get very excited about PROpulsion Pro. The question is, do each and every single one of you understand the value that this is offering you? So there's work that I need to do there, obviously. So that is a continuous process. But that's something that you can ask yourself, do your clients understand your value? So very, very important to ask that. When we build up value, or sort of, I give you a bit of a thing, one of the things that we should be doing is that if we are building value, so whether you are coming out with your value proposition for the first time in a way that clients can see and hear and understand this, or you bring something new onto your value proposition, the biggest thing that we don't do is that we don't communicate it to clients. And that's the most critical part, is we have to communicate with a client. So every time we build value, every time we introduce something, every time we add something, every time we change something, we need to communicate with the client. And that doesn't mean it's an email to the client. It means that you need to communicate that in several different ways. And we've covered communication on this channel more than I know. So there's enough information here to say, well, how do you use email, WhatsApp, your website, profile me, like all these kind of tools that I always profess. How can you use that in the meeting with clients? How do you discuss this with clients? So extremely important. And the whole reason why you want to communicate this is because we want to educate clients. And this is an important part, because I've said this also a lot of times, that when a client sits with you, or whether it's now via Zoom or it's in person, and you have this conversation and you get to the point where you say to them, Mr. or Mrs. Client, what do you want to do? What is your decision? And they just look at you and they go, Francois, I don't know. You the expert. I trust you. Or you the specialist. I trust you. I think whenever you hear that, it's a nice thing for the ego. Awesome. But that should really be big red warning signs that the client is not engaged in the process. They have no clue or very little clue with what's going on. Because by the end of such an engagement, the client, if they really were engaged and part of the conversation and they were part of making plans, they should have a very clear answer at the end to say, well, this is what I want to do. Or, Francois, I'm not sure. These are this is option 1, option 2. I think between those two, what do you think? Have a bit of more conversation, and then they can make a decision. So this is important. That's why you want to educate clients, because we want them more engaged in these conversations. We want them to take ownership and responsibility for their planning, and they must contribute to their planning. This isn't the case of they come and see us and they sit and listen to us and then do what we tell them to do. So this is why we want to do that. And the more they know and understand, the more they will see your value and even experience that value. So I want to sort of ask you this question, and I want you to be honest there in the chat, is to what extent do you describe to the client the processes that you go through? So if you think about everything that you do, and I'm going to give you a few ideas just now, but do you ever sit down and discuss all the processes that you're going to go through in what you do for the client? So whether it's a new client or an existing client, do you ever do that? Or do we just say, we're going to put a plan together for you. And then we leave it at that. So it's just like, oh, that's all you're going to do, and you're charging me a lot of money. Because that's where this originated from, is where, advisors are having sort of challenges to discuss with clients, like, why am I charging what I'm charging? And I've said this before, that you're going to hit a ceiling at some point where the client is going to look at the actual money amount and not the percentage. And we can come with those sort of, trying to tell them that, listen, it's all in a, I lost my words there. So it's all in relation to each other. So if you pay me 1%, but you get 10%, whether it's on 100,000, a million, or 10 million, it's still in that ratio. But at some point, somebody's going to look at it with whether they've got 100,000 Rand or 100 million Rand with you. They're going to go and see, like, what did you do for that Rand amount? Like, surely there's going to be a ceiling that we're going to hit in terms of the Rand amount that you're going to be able to charge. And this is something where, if your value proposition is strong enough, clients can understand and they see the value. They will never even chat about this. They would never even bring up the whole question around fees. So some of the things here. So let me see. So I haven't seen anybody saying anything about, like, do you do this or not? So let me just continue there. So getting to know and understand them. What is the process that you go through to do that? To continuously gather information, because information gathering, yes, there's a lot of information we get up front when it's a new relationship, but it's an ongoing process because things change. They need to be updated. They get new things. We need to add things, take things away. There's circumstances that change that we need to understand. And as they evolve through their lives, we need to be on that journey. And there's forever new information that are being shared with us, or that we should seek to uncover. So what is that process that you go through? Then always analyze and understand, like, what is that process? So once we have the information, what does that entail? Like, how do we analyze, and what do we do to understand what's going on, to have real context to the information that we have? Then from there, the big idea is then, obviously, on the one hand, to create a plan, but what does that really mean? It's really identifying solutions, and that can be anything from a restructure to a policy, and anything in between. It can be introducing them to new other professionals that can help them. There's so many things in terms of a solution, but it's basically creating a plan and then linking those solutions to what it is that we uncovered during the analysis and understanding the information. But what does that process really look like? And also, that is actually also an ongoing thing. Then, what do you and your staff and your team go through in order to implement some of these recommendations that the client decides to go forth with? What does it mean to monitor, and what does the review process look like? So do we explain these things in detail? What about all the servicing that's being done in the back end? What does that look like? Do we explain to them, the amount, how much time you hang on for call center sometimes, and how many times you need to send the same email to get a response, and all those kind of things. And also all the communication between you and the client, and you and service providers or other professionals, whoever may be a party to this relationship. And then the other thing that I don't think we share with clients is what we need to do in order to stay up to date with what's going on, making sure that we're at the cutting edge of where we are and where things are going. So all of that. So there's a lot of questions there, and that's not all of them. But do you describe the processes that you go through and that you use in order to do all of this for them? Because if they can see a whole list of things, and let me sort of give you a sort of 3-step, 3-phase process that you can follow in order to build value. So the first step where you need to start off with is just with what you're doing at the moment. So you need to identify. So you just identify, but then and list, and then you need to describe that in detail. That's the second part to that. So identify every single thing that you and your staff is doing or are doing, and describe it in detail, what it is that you do. And once you have that list, I mean, that's already like amazing, and say, Mr. Mrs. Client, like, this is what we do for you every single day, every single month, every year. Then what you can do is, if you want, because I would suggest that you start at step 1 and just start there if you want to start communicating your value better to clients. The second part would then be to say, well, what other things can I introduce in order to offer the client a better experience or a better result or a better solution, a better outcome. So what are the things that you can add, but also maybe which things should you be taking away on the other hand as well. So that is extremely important that one can do that. Then the big thing here is that when you've done 1 and 2 or just 1, then you sit with a list, and that list is basically a list of features. It is just what you do. It doesn't describe what it means to the client. It doesn't show them the benefit. It doesn't show how it's going to change their lives. It doesn't show them how it helps them getting from A to B. So that would be then the next thing, is like for each one of those things that you've listed, you need to explain the benefit of each. And obviously this is a massive task if you want to do this. So my suggestion would be that you really think about it before just jumping in and trying to do everything. I'll start off with a list, but then break it down and every day write a few benefits for a few of those at a time. And before you know it, in a month, 2 months, 3 months, you've got that list and document it. It's very important. Please don't just write it on a piece of paper unless somebody is going to type it up for you so that you've got it somewhere where everybody has access to it in your business. So extremely important. So this can be very daunting, but so rewarding when we do this. So you can expect the same from PROpulsion Pro very soon. All right, so that is that one. Some of the sort of places where you add value, and this isn't just mine, my own sort of thing, or the different phases in which we add value. Mine looks a little bit different. But when I did my research on this one, I found this formula that has been published by Russell Investments. And I've changed it around a little bit. I'm not going to show you the actual formula. You can go and look. The link is there on the bottom of the screen. Or you can just go and Google for financial advisor value Russell Investments, and you'll actually find it very easily. And one of the things is that when we do planning, because it's planning around many, many things, there's a lot of value that we add when we do planning. And this is specifically focused on investments, by the way. So it's not looking even at estate planning and holistic financial advice from that point of view. But planning, just in terms of investments, if you really plan well, it adds a lot of value. Costs, something that we can't ignore. You have to focus on costs. You've got to understand what the impact is of a 0.2% extra a year over the next 20 years. It makes a massive difference. So costs is something that one needs always to be certain of. And remember, costs works in the opposite direction as growth. So very important. So we want to keep that as low as possible. Then the annual review and rebalancing. So they just talk about an annual rebalancing. But this is really, I also said annual review and rebalancing, because, it is about having a discussion with the client. I'm not all for, just sending somebody an email and saying, here's your latest information, let me know if you want to see me. But as far as investments are concerned, it's really to understand where they are we still on the right track, and then bringing them into the asset allocation sort of target that we set for this particular plan. So that is also important. And there's different ways, obviously, to do it. If you do it yourself, that's fine. If you use like model portfolios, DFMs, those kind of things, it's fine. But it still needs to happen, and there's a lot of value that is being added there. In all the research that I looked at, it doesn't matter whether it was Russell Investments or it was, I think I found some things on Think Advisor, but there were other investment houses that did a lot of the same kind of research. And what they said is that, on average, people with an advisor gets 3 to 5.7% per year extra on their investments over the long term. But the one thing that all of them had in common is that they all said that the biggest contributor to value, to adding that additional value, the biggest part of that came from managing the behavior of the client, so that clients don't make mistakes, that clients don't act on emotion, those kind of things. Again, educating clients in the process. So behavior is by far the thing where you add most value, but we want to talk about the funds that we picked and why we're choosing Coronation over Alan Gray, over Voort, for example. So that's not the value. The value is not there. the biggest part of the value is keeping them invested and making sure that they don't make simple mistakes and decisions based on their emotions. And then also, and this is something that so many advisors are ignoring, because I'm not a tax practitioner. Tax is not my forte. Oh, my business doesn't allow me to look at. We cannot do investments without considering the tax implications. Costs and taxes are the two things that erode the value of any investment apart from inflation. So those things are extremely important to focus on. So that also adds a lot of value to the investor and the client over time from an investment perspective. So hopefully that gives you a starting point for that, and that you can really say, well, like centered around those things. If you do a lot of investments, for example, what is the value there? But then also you can go and say, well, if you don't do that, if you do a lot of risk business, just swap it around and say, well, where's the value here? What are those aspects of risk planning and estate planning that really adds a lot of value? And then build your things around that. So if any client ever has any price objection or questions around fees or anything, focus on the value. It is the value that it doesn't take their attention away from the price conversation, but it negates that, I think, because like if I can see, this is all you do, you're actually undercharging me. I loved it. Somebody sent me an email, a video message the other day, on the weekend actually, saying that, PROpulsion Pro, I think you're totally undercharging. And I'm also happy to hear that, and also like, okay, it's an interesting observation. So, but that is what you want. It means that he can see the value, but not everybody sees the value. And that's what we need to understand. So the more of your clients see the value, the easier these conversations become. But my tip for you today is to focus on the value, not on the 1%, 0.75, 0.5, whatever that may be. So let's just quickly recap this before we end. So value is the difference that you make. Communicate with your clients ongoing. Talk to them about what it is that you do, how you do it. Keep on building your value, refining your value. Focus on your value, and then manage the clients. That is the big thing here. So we need to manage the client. We don't need to be focusing on other things. We only need to be managing the client. That is your role as a Cat 1 financial advisor. It's not managing the product. It's not choosing the funds. None of that. It is all about managing the client. Cool stuff. I'm going to run through the comments quickly. I hope that was valuable for you. And, I'm always interested or like curious to have that conversation to continue. So you're welcome to do that. So good morning, everybody. Yvonne says here, value brings meaning. Adds, supports, enhances, and contributes. Yeah. Wayne is asking the question, value versus quality. I think they go hand in hand. Yvonne, it is intrinsically and extrinsically, that's big words for me. I'm from the Free State, guys. Driven, and these need to be articulated and agreed with permission in a way that makes sense. Yes, amazing. Kevin, good morning, Kevin. While it's nice to hear this, is also a good sign the client's not being involved enough or not having the courage to make their own decision. Yes, and they try and shift that responsibility. But you know what happens when we shift the responsibility? If anything goes wrong, it wasn't me. And that's the one thing that I would want to avoid. Let me see. Kuvendra says, I explain my purpose, the financial planning process, and my journey. Planning today to live tomorrow. The importance of transparency in having a relationship before product. Amazing. Well done, Kuvendra. I really love that. That's good. Ben, I really understood my value as advisor the first time I had the privilege to pay a claim. Very emotional experience. Yes. And then Yvonne says value over cost, focus how it's articulated. Yes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I need to run to my next session. Have a good one. Thank you very much for being here. Next week, I have none other than, where is this picture? Let me just bring it up. Mr. Hugo van Zyl is back on the show. Excuse me. Very, very excited to have Hugo back. We're going to be talking about the latest exchange control changes, as well as some tax updates and a whole host of other things. For those of you that know Higu, he is an avid speaker. So really looking forward to that, to having him next week. So don't miss it. Friday, the 23rd of April at 7 a.m. live right here on YouTube and LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic weekend. I appreciate it. And we'll catch each other soon.